Okay.
Perfect. Okay. Should we? Yeah.
Excellent. So it's wonderful to have Mr. Rossiter here, old Stoic. In a moment, I'll pass over to Barnaby, who's going to lead the session today. One of the things I like especially about having old Stoics back, especially in the medical field, is as a chemistry teacher, obviously you teach all the medics who have to go through, they've got to do chemistry. But it's lovely to hear about what life is like after Stowe and to actually catch up. One hopes that maybe the next time you see an old Stoic who's gone into medicine isn't when they're advancing at you with a scalpel because you're in dire need of something, but it's a great journey and a great profession. There are many routes into it, and sometimes it can seem like a bit of a sort of closed book, how do you get in there? But with the medics I'm working with at the moment in the sixth form, it's great that there's the camaraderie already amongst them, and I think that's all part and parcel of the medical profession. But let me pass over to Barnaby now, who's going to introduce today's guest. Thank you, Barnaby.
So we have with us this afternoon Mr. Nigel Rossiter, who is a consultant trauma and orthopaedic surgeon currently. He's previously served in the military for a number of years as a surgeon and has chaired many trauma councils and co-authored the original STEP course and has been a surgical skills tutor and is also an old Stoic. So without any further ado, Mr. Rossiter, over to you.
Thanks, Barnaby. Well, hopefully a few of you can hear me. I thought I would go through a little bit about what you might be thinking about if you're thinking about a profession in medicine. And I think the first thing to say to you is do as I say, not as I did. I had a truly fabulous time at Stowe, so good that I didn't get very good A-levels. And the most difficult thing about medicine is getting into it. Once you're actually at medical school, quite frankly, a monkey could be a doctor. It's not difficult. The work isn't difficult. It's purely that there's a large volume of it. And almost anyone can do that work if you're committed. But you need to work hard to get in there in the first place. So I had far too good a time at Stowe, and I left with not particularly great A-levels, and I had to retake. And trying to get into medicine as a retake candidate nowadays would be almost impossible. It was pretty jolly hard when I did it. So my first very big advice to you is, unfortunately, work hard, play hard. And I'll come on to that in a little bit in a moment. You want to get good exams first go. So for those of you in the fifth form, I know GCSEs this year are slightly up in the air, but you want as good a grades as you're going to possibly get. And then you need to then think very hard about your A-levels. So if we start to talk about A-levels, does it matter if you do A-levels or the baccalaureate? Probably not. Doesn't make too much difference to most universities, though. Medicine is a relatively old-fashioned profession. So I should apologise for my appearance. I am at work. I've just taken a bit of time out to chat to you all. So medicine is relatively old-fashioned, and actually most universities still work off A-levels. But if you're doing the baccalaureate, that is not the end of the world. I'm going to concentrate on A-levels because I presume most of you will be doing A-levels. So when you choose your A-levels, you're going to have to do 2 sciences, and one of them must be chemistry. Other than that, the other science actually doesn't matter that much. It could be biology, it could be physics, but maths is also counted as a science. So chemistry plus biology, physics, or maths. And then your third A-level can actually be anything. And there are actually increasing numbers of universities that actually encourage you not to do 3 sciences. My youngest son is just about to start at medical school, and he did chemistry, biology, and politics. So there is an encouragement to have a breadth of understanding and a breadth of study. That's what we like in doctors. We like people who are not narrow-minded. We like people who have a breadth of study. So definitely chemistry, one other science, and something else. And if you want to do 3 sciences, go for it. Should you do 4 A levels? I know plenty of schools, and I know Stowe is one of those that will let you or might encourage you to do 4 A levels. By all means do. My advice to you about doing 4 A levels is, by all means do 4 A levels, but make sure that you're going to get good grades. To get into medical school nowadays, you're going to need at least 1 A star, probably 2 A stars, and some are offering 3 A stars. So if you're going to do 4 A levels and you're not going to get, by doing the 4th A level, that's going to pull your grades down on the other 2 or 3, forget it. Do 3. Concentrate on 3 and get good grades in 3. My youngest son started doing 5 A levels, thought that was a bit much, and so did I. So he started off on 4 and then decided that was all a bit too much, and so did 3. And 3 A levels is absolutely fine. Your grade offer that you will get from a university is on 3 A level grades. It's not on 4. And that brings me on to the EPQ, the extended project qualification. Now, if you have the opportunity to do an EPQ, I'd actually strongly advise you to do so, partly because it will bolster your application, and partly, as I'll come on to a bit later, unfortunately, you are about to enter a career that is very, very competitive. And although getting into medicine is hard, jobs beyond medical school become even harder. And you need something in your CV, in your portfolio, that's going to separate you from everyone else. So think about doing an EPQ. It does not have to be medically related. If you can think of something medically related, by all means do it. I'm sorry, I'm probably going to use my son as an example. He decided to do an EPQ on sleep deprivation amongst A-level students and what it did to your grades during your course. And he studied all his lower 6th year for a year and looked at their exams and then correlated it with the amount of sleep they were getting. And then, surprise, surprise, there is a direct correlation. If you're getting less than 6 hours sleep a night, you're going to do badly. So that's probably a good thing to do. The next thing to think about in medicine is you're going to have to show that you've done some work experience. Now, right now, unfortunately, that is difficult. Obviously, we're right in the middle of COVID, coronavirus, and I'm sorry to say that is going to be a little bit difficult right now. I very much hope that come June, we are going to start taking work experience students back again. I usually have a work experience student with me every 2 weeks for a week, and we haven't had any for a couple of months now. But you need to get some work experience. And you should get work experience in as many environments in medicine as you can. So go to the hospital. I'm biased, I'm a surgeon, and I think surgery is sexy, and lots of other people do, but you're going to have to, if you want to be a surgeon, you're going to have to do a lot of other stuff before you get there. So go and get some work experience in general practice, in care of the elderly, in gastroenterology. Deal with poo and people coughing on you and people peeing all over you. You know, you need to go and see stuff. Go and get some work experience in a care home. That would be a really good thing to do. Definitely go and do some general practice. And if you can do some other stuff, volunteering for a charity that looks after people with mental illness or people with physical disability, if you have some sort of relationship with a community in Buckingham that you can go and do some stuff in people's homes, all the better. Everything helps. Which brings me on to what you will hear occasionally in medical schools and what's called resilience. So when you apply to a medical school, most medical schools nowadays want you to show what we call resilience. So if you go there and all that is on your application is academia, you're probably not going to get shortlisted for an interview or get an offer. We need to see that people have something else to their career and are resilient and have something else to fall back on. And that can be anything. That could be playing a musical instrument, playing in an orchestra, singing in a choir. That can be sport. That can be being an artist. It doesn't matter, but it needs to be something outside your narrow spectrum of your A-levels or your EPQ. So if you're a great sportsman, great, put that down. But you don't have to be the world's best sportsman. I mean, if you enjoy playing hockey or tennis and you're not the world's greatest, but that's something you love, put it down. And if you play that in the club at home, do it. We need to see a breadth of your character and your ability to deliver the academic goods whilst having something else to your bow. And that brings me on to gap years. Now, I'm probably going to say something that might not be very popular with your parents, might not be popular with some of you, and might not be popular with a few of your masters, but you must go on a gap year. If you talk to every doctor, if you look at all doctors in hospitals or general practice, it'll probably be 50-50. 50% will have done a gap year and 50% won't. But I can almost guarantee to you that those that didn't do a gap year will have regretted it. And there are lots of reasons you should go on a gap year. And I think they fall into 4 categories. So reason number 1 is medicine is a jolly long career. Most of you are 16 or 17 years old. You're going to go to medical school aged 18 or 19. And the trainees who work for me are still taking exams aged 36, 37, and do not become a consultant like I am until they're about somewhere between 36 and 40. So whatever age you are now, double it. That is the amount of time you're going to be studying for and the amount of time you're going to be taking exams for. Don't think it stops when you get to medical school. I'm afraid it's only just starting. So it is a long career path, and I'll talk you through that career path. And once you're on that career path, it's actually jolly difficult to step off and have some time out. So a great time to have time out is at the beginning. Have a gap between school and university and go and have a bit of time off. So that's number 1. Number two is you will think you're enjoying Stowe. I hope you're enjoying Stowe. I had a brilliant time there. But I can promise you, university and medical school is the best time of your life. It truly is just fabulous. And if you can go there a little bit more mature, able to manage a budget, get yourself out of a gutter when drunk, stop yourself being abducted, manage to look after your clothes and everything else, and be able to look after yourself without being waited on hand and foot, you will get to university and you'll just enjoy it more. So just being that little bit more mature, you'll have much more fun at university. Right, so that's 2. Number 3, third reason is that medicine is all about empathy. And empathy is not sympathy. Empathy is the ability to understand the situation that a person is in. So you're leaving Stowe, you're in the most fabulous place on earth, but you're leaving a pretty closeted institution and you're going to university, another closeted institution, and you're then going to train in a hospital, another closeted institution. So when have you been out there in the big wide world and understand what other people are going through? You will be a much better doctor, nurse, physiotherapist if you've had a little bit of time out, a little bit of time in the real world to understand how people work, and you will develop empathy. Right, so those are 3. You can forget them all. Number four is the one that is actually really important. So if you get into medical school, you are already, by definition, in the top 1% academically in the country. That's a given. You have to be good to get there. And the medical degree is the only degree in British universities that's not graded. So there are no firsts, no 2 1s, 2 2s or thirds. It's either pass or fail. And I have no idea, when you leave medical school, whether you're a 99% graduate or a 51% graduate. I've no idea at all. And at some point in your career, you are going to apply for a job. Now, when I advertise for a job to come and work with us, I get about 60 to 90 applicants for every job we advertise. And I've got to appoint just one person. Now, in the bad old days, or the good old days, I used to write a letter, write out a CV, and it was very straightforward. And I'd send them in, and I'd come home to my wife, I'd have a big pile of applications. And if you couldn't write English and couldn't structure a CV, that was easy. I just used to throw it out. But put yourself in my place. For every time you apply for a job, everything you do now is online. So when I look at your application to come and work for me or to go to medical school, it's all on an online document and it's laid out exactly the same. So they all look the same. All of you've got good A-levels, you must have done to get to medical school, and you've got a medical degree. And I don't know whether you've got 99% or 51%. So why should I interview you? You need something else to your bow. You need something that jumps out of your application that makes me sit up and think, gosh, that's a really interesting boy, girl. At least it will get you an interview. So go and do something wacky in your gap year. Doesn't have to be medically related. Go and canoe the Okavango. Go and sail across the Atlantic. Go and work in an orphanage in Uganda. Go and teach football at a school in Australia. Go and do something that's different, that makes me look at your application and think, gosh, there's someone who's had a bit of gumption, gone out there and done something very, very different. And that will at least get you an interview. And then once you're in front of me, that's up to you. If you then mess up the interview, that's your fault. But you need to put yourself one step ahead of everyone else, because everything, I'm afraid, is competitive. Which brings me on to the dreaded UKCAT and BMAT. So your A-levels are really important, but there are a number of medical schools and increasing numbers of medical schools that actually pay relatively little heed to your A-level results. Your A-level results just confirm whether they are going to confirm your offer. And a lot of medical schools now rely on a thing called the UKCAT examination, or BMAT. More use UKCAT than they do BMAT. And you need to have a look around and start to study on those. There are many medical schools who won't even offer you a place unless you score very highly in the UKCAT exam. And Edinburgh, Newcastle are examples of that. They're great medical schools, but you have to take the UKCAT exam, and unless you're in the top 10% of the UKCAT, they're not even going to look at your application. So you're going to have to look very carefully at where you want to go, look at what they expect from you, and increasing numbers of them want you to do the UKCAT or the BMAT exam, and you'll do that in your lower 6th year, and that will determine whether they're actually going to invite you for an interview or give you an offer. And they will give you an offer on your A-levels, but it's your UKCAT or BMAT score that will determine whether they're actually going to give you that offer in the first place. There's even talk of medical schools just ignoring A-levels altogether and going completely on their own examinations or using an updated version of UKCAT, but not there yet. So where should you apply for medical school? And I'm going to talk about UK and Ireland. You can go abroad by all means. There's nothing wrong with going abroad, but I'll limit this to UK and Ireland medical schools. It really doesn't matter. Every single medical degree is the same. So when you apply for a job with me, I don't give a damn whether you whether you got your degree from Oxford, Cambridge, Edinburgh, Newcastle, Southampton, London, Bristol, Dublin, doesn't matter. The degrees are all the same. Some of them have got slightly different letters. Most of them are MBBS, some of them are MBBCH, some are different letters to that, but it doesn't matter. It's a medical degree and they're not graded. You'll pass or you fail. About 0.05% of the medical graduates get honours. So you're pretty special if you get honours, but most of you are going to get a pass or fail degree. And it really doesn't matter where you go. So you need to go and have a look at the prospectuses of the universities. You need to have a look, and you need to go and visit a few and decide whether that university is something you want to go to. You might decide you want to be as far away from Stowe and your parents as you want to be. So you end up in St Andrews or Aberdeen, or in Belfast. But you need to go and have a look and decide what course looks good for you, and go and have a look at that university. Every single one is different, but you all come out with the same degree, and it really makes no odds once you've got that degree where you got it from. You are a doctor, and you can apply for any job anywhere with that degree. So finally, that brings me on to your career structure. So most medical schools are 5 years. You might get offered what's called an intercalated BSc year, and do an extra year to get an extra qualification. So you might decide you quite enjoy studying anatomy or physiology or pharmacology, and get another year to do a BSc. If you go to Oxford or Cambridge, it's 6 years. It's 3 years undergraduate at Oxford and Cambridge, and then 3 years either staying on there or going usually to London to do your clinical years. If you want to do medicine as a postgraduate, it's a 4-year degree, and it's pretty hard work in that 4 years. And then beyond that, everyone does 2 years of foundation year training as a doctor. And then beyond that, you choose what you want to do, whether it be general practice, anesthetics, obstetrics and gynecology, surgery or medicine or whatever. Slightly varies the training program after your foundation 2 years. The shortest time is in general practice, and there are still some schemes in general practice that are only 3 years. Most of them are now 4. So think about it. Shortest period of time after getting to medical school is 5 years at medical school, 2 years foundation training, that's 7, 3 years general practice training, that's 10 years beyond medical school. So coming out, go to medical school age, say 19, coming out age 29. If you're stupid and you want to be a surgeon like me, then it's 5 years medical school, 2 years foundation training, 2 years of core training, and then 6 years of specialist training. So 5 years medical school, 2 years foundation, 7, 2 years core training, 9, 6 years specialist training, 15 years minimum. So you're going to finish training age 36-ish and become a consultant sometime between 36 and 40. And you'll be taking exams all the way to the end. Right, that's probably far too much waffle from me. I suspect there are 1 or 2 questions.
Yeah, great. I think firstly, could you tell us a little more about your career in the military? At what point did you take that decision, and how might medical school be different for someone going into the army compared to kind of civilian?
So yes, I did go. I spent 20 years in the army, and that was probably Stowe that pushed me that way. I was in the CCF. I ended up as a senior under officer, and I loved it. I didn't leave Stowe with very good A levels, so I did go into the army for a short period of time, and then decided that actually I better go and retake my A levels because it was a better career. So if you go into the military, it doesn't matter whether it's the Army, Navy, or Air Force. You can apply to be sponsored at medical school from your 3rd year. So your first 2 years are the same as everyone else, and you can apply to be sponsored from your 3rd year. Now, the pro of that is that all your fees and everything else at medical school is paid by the military, and you get a salary, which is jolly nice. I had quite a lot of money as a medical student, and I was the only person who had a car. It was great. However, the downside of that is the military get their pound of flesh. So after leaving medical school, you sign on the dotted line, and you have to do a minimum of 6 years with the military. And 6 years is a very clever period of time, because if you think about it, you've got your 2 years as a foundation doctor. You will then go and spend 2 years, or a minimum of 1 year, and probably 2 years doing what's called general duties. So in the army, you become a regimental medical officer, and you go off essentially being the doctor for a regiment. In the Navy, you might go off, if you're lucky, and be a doctor on a ship, and in the RAF, you'd be a doctor on an air base. And it's only after that that you can start your training in general practice or surgery or medicine. And you've only got 2 years then to do your training, and that isn't long enough. So it's a very clever piece of timing. And if you're going to be trained, you either decide you don't like the military and you come out, in which case you're going to be at least 4 years behind your peers. And if that's okay with you, that's fine. Or you sign on the dotted line and you're going to be staying in for much longer while the military sponsor your training. Now, if you do that, the military will sponsor your training, and in Britain, that's done largely via the NHS. You will get trained as everyone else does, you just happen to be in uniform. There are no military hospitals in the NHS. There are hospitals that have military wings attached to them, but there are no true military hospitals. So you will be a doctor in uniform in an NHS hospital, being trained in exactly the same way as everyone else. The other option is to say, okay, I don't really want to do 6 years, and I'm not sure I really do want to be in the military. So you do your medical school, and you come out at the end of medical school and think, okay, yeah, I do want to be in the military. So you sign on after medical school. The advantage of that is you only have to do 3, not 6 years, because the military hasn't paid for your time at medical school. And the advantage of that is that at 3 years, if you decide, no, this really isn't for me, it's relatively easy to come out and step back into training in the NHS. But if you decide you like it and you want to stay in the military, you can sign on as everyone else does. So my usual advice to people is, don't do what I did. I did get a cadetship and I was sponsored through medical school, and it was marvelous. And I did have a great time. But the military is very different now to when I was in it. Your life changes. When I joined, I was very gung-ho. I nearly became a Royal Marine. I got my Green Beret. I jumped out of airplanes. I've got my parachute wings. I was very gung-ho. And then I got married. And that changes your perspective on life, surprisingly enough. And I got married and got sent to Northern Ireland for 2 years, and that was hard work. And then I had kids, and I had 4 children. All of them are thanks to military campaigns. It's one of the reasons I left. If I'd stayed on, I'd have ended up with 10 children. But your life when you have children massively changes, and my perspective on life changed. And I had a fantastic time for 20 years, but I grew out of it. I don't regret it, but you need to be aware and like medicine, go in with your eyes open.
Yeah, I think leading on from that, what sort of places were you posted to, and do you think your time in the military gave you some valuable experience for working in the NHS?
Oh, absolutely. Very much so. Whether the same will be true nowadays, I can't tell you. When I joined the military, there were 27 military hospitals around the world. There were 9 in the UK, and there are none now. The only British military hospital left is in Cyprus. There are no others. Yeah, I did 3 tours of Northern Ireland. I went to Bosnia, Kosovo, Kenya, Sierra Leone, Oman, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Belize, America. Yeah, I had an amazing time. And I had, my interest has always been in trauma. Military is a great place to train if you want to be in trauma. So I did fellowships training in trauma in this country. I had a year doing trauma in the United States. I actually had 3 months doing trauma in Siberia, in Russia, which was an amazing experience before the Iron Curtain came down. And that was a truly amazing experience. So I came out of the military with a very different CV, which made me very marketable. But can I promise you that's going to happen today or 20 years from now? No, I don't know. I haven't got that crystal ball.
Medicine's obviously a very demanding and stressful career at times. How do you keep a work-life balance, and do you find it difficult not kind of dwelling on decisions that you've had to make as part of your job?
That's a very good question. So my wife and kids keep me grounded. I'm going to tell you a bad story. I'm going to tell you a naughty story. It's a military story. So when I left the military and I got my job where I am now, and I work in Basingstoke, at my interview, I was asked that very question by the chairman of the trust. And at the time, I was a colonel in the army. And I was living in a Royal Marine mess. I was the senior officer in a Royal Marine mess. And I was commanding the naval unit in Plymouth. And I said to him, he was an ex-air vice marshal. I said to him, you will understand this. I'm an army colonel living in a Royal Marines mess, commanding a naval unit. It's pretty stressful. And I come home from a bad day's work and I go to the bar with these young subalterns who are all full of adrenaline. I tell them I've had a bad day. And they pour beer over my head and they kick the living daylights out of me. And then we go to what's called a run ashore. We have a few beers in town and we end up somewhere that we probably shouldn't be. And actually, being a doctor, that's what I said about being at medical school. Being a doctor is that you will learn very, very quickly. It's about work hard, play hard. And you learn quite quickly how to compartmentalize your life. And you will spend a lot of time mixing with medics, and opening up to them and talking about what you've been through is definitely a thing you should do. But you can also have privately a bit of a laugh about things, have a beer, but do something else. That was about resilience. Go and play rugby, go and sailing, go and sing in a choir, do something outside medicine.
Yeah, great. Could you, due to the difficulties of the UK lockdown, what work experience would you encourage potential medical applicants to be aiming for in this time?
You should still apply for work experience in hospital. You should still apply for work experience with GPs. Definitely stuff in care homes. There's no reason why you can't go and do it. As long as you get given the proper personal protective equipment, the PPE, there's no reason why you shouldn't apply for it. Right at this moment, this week, we're not doing it. Is that going to change? Definitely. When is it going to change? I can't tell you. I very much hope it's going to change in June or July. I would be amazed if we're not allowing work experience people in come autumn term. But I'm afraid your guess right at this moment is as good as mine.
Have you got any top tips when it comes to choosing the right medical school to apply to?
No, everyone is different, and it really doesn't matter. So don't feel that because Oxford and Cambridge have great reputations, or Durham has a great reputation, or Edinburgh has a great reputation, that you should go there. It doesn't matter. A medical degree from Glasgow is the same as a medical degree from St Mary's in London, is the same as a medical degree from Trinity College Dublin. It doesn't matter. You should go and see what fits for you. So my son went to visit, I think, about 10 medical schools and came away from 3 or 4 going, no, I'm never going there. Don't want to do that. Went to Newcastle and said, oh my goodness, that's brilliant. It's got the longest bar in Europe. That's the one for me. But he's not going there. He's going to where I went at the London. I didn't encourage him to go there. He's going to the London hospital. But, you know, it's up to you. And if you're unlucky, like me, sometimes you have to go where that offers you a place, and you might not, and that might not be your first choice. But I can guarantee you'll enjoy it. They're all the same, and the degree is the same.
So why did you choose your speciality, and what in particular drew you to the area of orthopaedic surgery?
Originally, I wanted to be a general practitioner. I grew up in Devon, and my best friend's father was the GP in Silcombe, and we had a plan for me to take over his practice once I left the army. But I did a year in general practice, and I absolutely hated it. It just wasn't for me. And a lot of my friends at medical school went into surgery and went into orthopaedic surgery from the rugby team. And so I kind of got dragged into it. And I've always been interested in trauma, and trauma is orthopaedic surgery. In the UK, most trauma surgery is run by orthopaedic surgeons. And so I kind of got dragged that way. So it works for me. I enjoy it. It's not for everyone. I have some of my best friends couldn't think of anything worse than being in the operating theatre. I'm at my absolute happy, up to my neck in blood, pus, poo, pee, whatever. And it's great because I don't get interrupted. There's no bleeps going off. I can just crack on with my job. but it's not for everyone.
Yeah. You know, with numerous advances in medical technology and new medicines, do you find it difficult to kind of keep up with this kind of?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yes and no. So I'm coming to the end of my career. Some of the stuff I'm still learning about. My children are teaching me more than I learn from them nowadays. A lot of the medical technology we're getting used to. So we're using robots in the operating theatre now. Certainly getting used to that. In the next 2 or 3 months in my hospital, we'll have no paper. Everything is electronic. That's a nightmare for me because I'm a moderately fast 2-finger typist, but I'm not very good apart from that. But thank God we got voice recognition. So I can just dictate and it puts it straight on the screen, which is great. Are some of the advances in technology a step too far? Yes. I'm afraid I am a believer that some things have gone probably too far and we may run into trouble. But I recognise I'm a dinosaur. I'm not going to be retiring very far away. The younger people coming through will get round it as we always have done. It's exciting times. It always will be exciting times. So yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever been in a kind of medical situation when you've not known the best way forward? Or the
Absolutely.
best course of action?
Yeah, all the time. And that's why it's great to be part of a team. And when you eventually find where you want to work with a bunch of people who you're going to enjoy working with, and you can bounce ideas off. I don't know all the answers. Yes, I've been the president of God knows how many organisations, but that doesn't mean I'm the best at it. It just means I was stupid enough not to keep my hand down when they asked for volunteers. But yeah, if we get presented with a difficult case, we run weekly what are called MDTs, multidisciplinary team meetings. And so we present the case, we all come to a conclusion of what the best way to treat that patient is, and then we do it as a team. So it's no longer one person doing it. It's teamwork. I see there's a question from James about why am I a Mr. and not a doctor?
Yeah, we're just about to ask that actually. So
that's a long historical thing. So you all qualify as a doctor. It's only in Britain that we're Misters. It can be in any Commonwealth country, but it's largely in Britain. But when surgery first started to be born in the 14th century, the only thing that you could really do in surgery was let blood. So if you think about being a bloodletter, not surprisingly, the physicians thought we were witch doctors, and they were not keen on surgeons becoming part of their faculty. And so in those days, everyone was part of a livery in London, and the livery of physicians wouldn't allow surgeons in. So the only livery that would allow surgeons in were the livery of barbers. And so all bloodletting was done in barber shops. And that's why, actually behind you, Barnaby, you've got that American flag. But if you think about outside barber shops, the sign outside a barber shop is a red and white stripy pole. And that's because you used to hold a pole out in front of you while your blood was being let. And so we became part of the Institute or the livery of barbers, and we became the barber surgeons. And to differentiate us from physicians, we took the title of Mr., and I'm allowed to put Esquire after my name. So I'm Mr. Nigel Rossiter, Esquire. Whereas everyone else are doctors. They're just plebeians. Yeah, they all say exactly the same about surgeons.
So what do you think is the largest challenge facing the NHS going into the future? Not necessarily coronavirus.
Yeah. Being overwhelmed. Medicine has moved on. The population is extraordinarily more informed than it was when I qualified. People demand much more nowadays than we could ever think about doing 40 years ago, and more than the NHS can offer. And it is an unfortunate fact of life that in a socialised system of healthcare, you are going to have to ration things. And at the moment, that is a bit of a postcode lottery. That's not fair. But it needs to be a national thing. I'm a massive believer in the NHS. But there are going to be things that we can't afford to do. So cosmetic surgery, having your facelift, your nose made a certain shape. No, I'm going to stick my neck on the line. That shouldn't be on the NHS. You pay for that. If you have cancer, you get knocked off your bike, you have terrible trauma, you have a heart attack, you have a stroke, NHS absolutely should look after you and will always look after you, and you will always get the best care in the NHS for that. In my profession, that's a difficult one because I do a lot of trauma, but the other side of the coin is I do a lot of knee replacements. Should we be doing knee replacements on the NHS? That's a tricky one. Probably the answer is yes, but is it as important as someone who's got cancer or a heart attack? No. So where do you draw the line?
Yeah. What is something you wish you knew before going into medicine?
What did I wish I knew before I went to? I went into it with my eyes open, I have to say, because almost everyone in my family, other than my parents, were doctors. So I had a pretty good idea. What did I wish I knew? I think I would have liked to have had a slightly clearer idea of what I was going to end up being and where I was going to end up. I think I still would have, if I'd loved general practice, I would have loved to have gone and been a GP in Salcombe, but that wasn't for me. Have I regretted anything? No. I don't think there's anything I really would have wished I'd known. Well, actually, no, that's not true. The one thing I really should have known is how much work I should have put in when I first did my A-levels. I had an unbelievable offer when I did my A-levels at Stowe, which you'll never get offered nowadays. I had an offer of three Bs to get into Birmingham, and I didn't get it. So yeah, I wish I'd worked harder first time round and didn't have to retake my A-levels. I had a brilliant time. I had an extra 2 years after that doing lots of different jobs, but that was hard work and stressful.
Yeah, so obviously you say yourself that your A-levels perhaps weren't as good as they could have been. What would you encourage people to do if their exam results aren't good enough to get them into university?
Nowadays that's tricky, but don't give up. I didn't. I retook my A-levels, and it took me another 2 years after retaking my A-levels to get in. It is difficult to get in as a retake candidate, but if you show resilience, if you get good exams the second time around and you really do want to do medicine, go for it. But could you do medicine after doing another degree? Yeah, absolutely. Lots of people go down the graduate course. It takes a bit longer, but there's no reason why you can't do that. And quite a lot, about 50% of the doctors who work for me now are graduates in other degrees before they did medicine.
I think that's pretty much everything in terms of the questions. So I think we're going to bring Mr. Turr back in now.
No problem.
But thank you very much. A massive thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Barnaby, for leading the questions there. And Nigel, thank you so much for coming back and sharing your experience. One of the things that amazes me the more I hear about people going to medicine is once you get in there, as long as you're open-minded about which direction it takes you, it doesn't matter if you know what you want to do initially, but actually going for it. And the pleasure that radiates from most doctors talking about their job means that it really is worth the hard work at A-levels, the many years at medical schools.
Yeah, it is. But don't, please, for your students, don't think you're going to be rich. You're not. You'll be comfortable. You might, if you're lucky, be able to send your children to private school, but you're not going to be swimming in money. And it is jolly hard work. You are going to work very hard. In the bad old days when I started, we did what were called 1 and 2s. I regularly did 110, 120 hours work a week. That was a commonplace. That should never occur now. You shouldn't work more than 48 hours as a trainee. In theory, I'm limited to 60 hours a week. That doesn't occur. I regularly work 60 to 80 hours a week. So it is hard work, but yeah, I enjoy it.
Do your days pass quickly?
Yes, and as I'm going to be awful to you, James. As you get older, the days actually pass even quicker. You're amazed. I mean, I'll let the cat out of the bag. I'm thinking of retiring from the NHS later this year. I'm probably going to keep going with my private work a bit longer. But, I've been a consultant for 24 years now, and it's flown past.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. Absolutely invaluable to get that, especially people in the, as you say, the slightly cosseted world of Stowe, and the idea of getting broader experience, which will help inform you and also give you a gap for medical school is a very good one. So I really, really appreciate it. And I'm sure everybody else does. Unfortunately, when you got an online thing, you can't have a warm round of applause for everyone there, but I'm sure everyone will have.
My two take-home messages from it are: work hard and get your A-levels first time, and do a gap year.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed.